There are over 1,000 board games behind me, but today we're going to talk about the top 20 board games of Taiwan. Part 1. Good morning! Whew. I'm gonna finally do it. I'm gonna finally do the most requested video that I've gotten lately, and that's because every time it's summer, people are coming to Taiwan and they're always asking me, Jay, I'm in Taiwan for a week, 2 days, a month. What are the best games? Where can I get them? Welcome to one of the last episodes of Cardboard East from Taiwan. Now I got two honorable mentions here that I want to get out of the way first. This is Iberian Rails from Monsoon Games. This is done by Tony Chun. Now Tony is one of those guys who can count cards when you play games. So if there's a game with player shields and Tony's playing with you, just take the player shields away because Tony knows exactly how many resources you have and how much money you have. And he made this game, and this is his first game that he designed. Iberian Rails is really fascinating because it takes the winsome cube rail games and matches it with character selection. So each game you play, there's going to be a display of characters, and each round you're going to be drafting these characters. And each character has a special ability. They might get a little bit more money, they might build more roads than usual, they might build more hotels at a cheaper price. And there are so many characters that when you play each game, there are different combinations to explore and exploit. This is a game that more people should be playing and talking about. Now, I should be telling you that the best game of all time from Taiwan, and there ever will be, is this one, because I co-designed it. This is War and Right, and essentially it's just diplomacy in 30 minutes. Me and my co-designers wanted to make like a roll and write game and a war game and push it together and see if what we could do and make it work. And I'm pretty happy with the results. There are unique player powers, there are team plays, so you have an Axis player and then you have allied players, and everything can be timed, and the allied players have to make their decisions out loud for the Axis player to hear. And it creates this fun little second language that the allied players kind of have to do. And the allied players really have to work together, otherwise they'll lose. And it has that Team Fortress America feel where the Axis powers are really strong and they have to really push really hard to hold that. But towards the end of the game, the allied players are a lot stronger, their unique player abilities kick in, and then the Axis players try to level out just enough so that they win at the end of the game. Now, Vegetable Stack is a weird game because I didn't know how I felt about it. This is a simple card game for 2 to 6 players, although I would never play this at 2. 3, probably 3 to 6 is where I would do it. And you just essentially take cards, you put them on the table, everyone drafts one card, and then you wash, rinse, repeat for a number of rounds, and that's it. That's the game. There's nothing else to it. The twist is the card that isn't drafted affects the market. So all the vegetables could go up in price or go down in price. And you're trying to fudge your system, you're trying to push your luck, you're trying to mind read and convince other players to take certain cards. And as simple as that rule set is, there are a little bit of layers to the gameplay, and it's all player determined. And I really appreciate that game for that. This is a game that I think people are going to be playing in the years to come. I already did a video about this, and I'll put a link down below, so check that out, Vegetable Stack. Number 19 is Soulaween or Vita Moors. I really can't decide between these two. These are from the exact same publisher, Play With Us Design. If I had to say one publisher in Taiwan is the Oink of Taiwan, I'd probably go with Play With Us Design. All the boxes are fairly small, slightly bigger than the Oink box game, but they have a really, really unique spin on them. Now you may have heard about them because Vita Moors won the UKGE award for like the most strategic card game. This game is really, really fascinating. I really don't like social deduction games, mostly because by the end of the game, or pretty much like the first 2 minutes, it just devolves into a screaming match and an arguing match, and I don't really like that atmosphere when I'm gaming. But Vita Moors does something different. There is no arguing or talking in Vita Moors, but you deduce who is who by the actions that they take. And you also get not only like a metal coin, but this really sweet metal Plague Doctor mini that comes in the box. I think that's just this nice little level of bling that's really, really cool and very well done. Now, while this gets more critical acclaim, I think I find myself liking Soulaween more. Soulaween is a 2-player only abstract game between competing teachers at a deaf god school. Now, I did a write about this way back when I was a blog and not a YouTube channel. Now, what I love most about this game is that the players are asymmetrical, and that even though the gameplay is rather simple, very similar to Othello, and there are a lot of board games that have this mechanic of I place a piece down and then pieces around the piece I placed all flip. There are a lot of games that have that mechanic, but what this does is something different. We are both competing for different shapes. Like maybe you're going for like 4 in a row, maybe I'm trying to do a check mark or square, and each god that you have, and there's quite a few in here, all score differently and they all have different player powers. So you have to take that into account when you play the game. And I find that pretty fascinating and a lot of fun to explore. Soulaween is the game that's really been building up the brand for Play With Us Design. And they've been selling lots of copies of this. They turned this into a giant blanket and turn these wooden components into pillows, and they have a giant version that you can play outside, which is undeniably cool. I took this game with me on one of my many trips to Tokyo, and I ended up playing this like at a bar, and we had an impromptu tournament. And it was a lot of fun playing this with Japanese gamers. And that's been my number 19, Soulaween, or Vita Mortis. Ketsai. This game, Castle Crush, is the first game from publisher Soso Studio. And that's a publisher you'll hear more of later on this list. But this is a game from an era of board games that I don't think is ever going to come again. Because as you can tell from this box cover, this game is all wooden components. Like big, chunky wooden components. This is the hammer. You put this on this little coffee thing and you drop it and it hits castles. You're going to have your own little town, and you have to build a town in hopes that it survives the hammer fall. And you will take turns dropping this on other people's castles, and whoever scores the most points just wins. And there's even an expansion that I somehow squeezed into this box. Now, a long time ago, I did ask this publisher, do you ever think you're gonna reprint this game? And he says like, no, wooden components are just way too expensive today. And he's right. And this is a quite hefty game, but it's never gonna leave my collection because it's just so fun. There's tons of engagement in the game, lots of highs, lots of lows, and you try really hard to make a castle that works and is strong and durable, but it just doesn't work sometimes in your favor. If you are in Taiwan, I definitely recommend trying to hunt this down because it's definitely worth adding to your collection. More Ideas Game Design is a publisher that you're going to hear a lot of on this list because I really like some of their games. While other publishers in Taiwan tend to be a little bit more approachable, More Ideas says, no, we're gamers only and we're making our games a little heftier than your average Taiwan game. And Symphony No. 9 is an excellent example of that. Symphony No. 9 is probably the best auction game that I've ever played. Now, this does play up to 4, but wow, the 2-player version of the auction is really fascinating. Yeah, that never happens, right? Because if it's an auction game, you usually have 3 players because a 2-player auction isn't fun. But the AI bot that Frank, the designer, did is really, really clever. The players take turns controlling the AI bot, the 3rd player, and sometimes you either do it to boost yourself, boost the bot, or maybe you want to harm your opponents. In Symphony No. 9, you are addicts of classical music, you are patrons of it, and you're giving money to composers so they can make more work. And it's really fascinating because if you work a composer to death, which you can in this game, then their music becomes even more valuable. One of the cute things is that you can even sell your furniture to get more money so you could influence the auction even more. And when I remember that when I was first taught this game, the designer just telling me this is like, yeah, you could sell your furniture if you want to get more money. And the first thing he did is he sold all his furniture and won this bid. I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? But that's Symphony No. 9, my number 17. More Ideas strikes again with Jiangnan. Jiangnan is literally and mechanically the heaviest game that they've done. This is designed by Du Gu Wei. Now, if you haven't heard of Dugui, he is an up-and-coming designer who's made some really great designs from Taiwan in the last few years. What I love about Jiangnan is how it combines area control, bag building, worker placements, all into one. It's really, really fascinating to play. How do I explain this game? There is a giant center game board that you put on the table, because it's a game is a table hog. And imagine that the city is divided into columns. Players take turns adding their workers to different columns, doing different things, getting some resources, fulfilling contracts, standard fare. But the twist is that at the end of the round, all the workers from the columns flow down and they get into a boat. And at the end of the round, that boat shifts. So in the next round, when you're placing your workers in the columns and they fall down into a boat that's already occupied. Now, as that boat continues to go off and out of the city, and once it goes out of the city, it's scored. And then now you're left with an area control on the boat. And whoever controls the boat controls the scoring for the entire game. You're choosing one of 6 tiles that determines what's going to be worth the most points. And you're constantly asking yourself in this game, do I want to take this action, or do I want to drop this action, because that way I have access to this boat, and that way I can win the area control and make sure that what I'm doing is going to score points at the end of the game. Now, there's a lot of blocking in this game because it's bag building, so maybe you don't have the right components to send your workers to the right place if you want to get to the boat, so you have the control, so you can make sure that you can determine what gets scored. And maybe you don't have the resources to go here, and it creates this weird, big, epic puzzle that's definitely worth exploring. Not to mention that the Deluxe Edition has really, really cool components, including 3D boats. More ideas strikes again. Now, whether it's going to be Guns of Steel the original or Guns of Steel Renaissance, or the new version of Guns of Steel, and I'll more on that in just a little bit, I don't think you can go wrong with any choice that you have. Now, a lot of people really love Seven Wonders Duel, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's a really good game, but push come to shove, I think Guns of Steel is a better game and just fits for me. One, it's just a deck of cards, and then 2, there's just a lot more bite to it. It can be really, really mean, especially the original one. Now in Guns of Steel, you make a pyramid of cards, and you're slowly building up your technology, so you're moving up and up. Now there are different ways to win. You can get the top technology, you score more points, you damage your opponents, and you're essentially just building a better hand in the game. Not really deck building, more like hand building. There's a lot to explore and a lot of different combinations to explore in the game. Now, if you're asking me what the difference is that I do like Renaissance a little bit more. That's because there are wonders in this game, and this provides another way for you to score wonders. And it's not as mean as this one. If you like 2-player civ building games that are really in your teeth with a lot of back and forth and gives you a lot of layers to explore, then Guns of Steel or Guns of Steel Renaissance are really good acquisitions to your collection. Yang comes from Board Game Nations and designer Dugui, who also did Jiangnan. Now, BGG Nations is a very odd publisher. Like, they have really odd-shaped boxes. Like, this is ridiculously shaped. Now, there's a second edition where it has, like, that nice standard Ticket to Ride box, but this is the first edition. And I gotta say that this is a very, very unique programming game. You are a scholar walking around ancient China and picking up crystals, doing certain actions to score points to get on this grid. Now, it sounds complicated, but it's really, really not. Heavy Cardboard did a teach and play of this, and I strongly recommend checking out that video. I'll put a link down below. But the reason why people talk about this game is this. This is a metal turtle shell. Metal. And you have metal coins that you toss into the turtle shell and then you dump out. And they could have just easily had like a nice flipping mechanic, but no. They needed a turtle shell. But I'm really glad they did, because it adds this bling and flair to the game that really makes it sing as something special. Now, while this game scales pretty well and the solo game is okay, I do think this game really shines at the 3 to 4 player count, because that's when it's the most crowded, there's more contention on the board, people are fighting for dominance left and right, and there's more chaos with the programming of how your scholar is going to move around the map. Best of all, though, is that this plays like nothing you've ever seen before. Really, really novel and unique game, and definitely worth checking out. Rescue Polar Bears, or Rescue Polar Bears Data and Temperature, or is it Data and Temperature Rescue Polar Bears? They have 2 entries on BGG. I forget which is which. But this is the only cooperative game on the list. And it is awesome. First thing I gotta say is the components are fantastic. You have these nice 3D boats that you have to make yourself, and the polar bears are the definition of adorable. And when you can't rescue one of the polar bears, especially the baby polar bear, oh, there's a hush that goes around the table of sadness. But what I really appreciate about Rescue Polar Bears is that it doesn't follow the pandemic style of play. It doesn't follow the standards of good things happen, then bad things happen. And it's rather unique. And you have to really, really work together to rescue the polar bears. And you can't rescue them all. And that's the worst part about this game. But if you love cooperative games and you want something that's really unique and different, then Rescue Polar Bears is something I would definitely seek out while you're here. They just drown in the sea and oh, it's brutal, brutal! Walking in Burano has this special place in my heart. I did the proofreading for this game, and I learned a very valuable lesson proofreading this game. And that lesson is that never underestimate how badly other players play. There's an ending trigger in this game that one person finishes their tableau, and that's when the game ends. But I never thought to think that players would play in such a way that they could go through the entire deck and not finish the tableau. And players were asking online, like, what do we do? What do we do? And it never occurred to me that that could happen. This is the little small card game that could, because year after year, I find myself gravitating back to this game because it's just so much fun. In Walking in Burano, you are drafting cards and placing them in little towns and making your own streets. You want an apartment of blue, orange, red, green, yellow. But of course, the problem with the drafting is that sometimes those colors don't match up and you get penalized. That is just one layer. The second layer is that each card has different things on the apartment. So there might be more potted plants, there might be a cat, there might be people, there might be different types of curtains. And there are even more layers where you draft characters to put on the bottom of your tableau, and they'll score the building above them, or they'll score a certain street, and depending on what card you placed where, you'll score certain points. And it's a really fascinating puzzle. Now, coming to Essen this year, there's Walking in Burano, the dice game. And I haven't played this enough to really decide if I like it more or less than Walking in Burano. I'm leaning more towards the original game. The main difference is that in this game, you're drafting cards that have the elements on them. They have the different flower pots, the different curtains, and you're trying to weave that puzzle together. Whereas in Roll and Write, all those pieces are kind of in place, but the dice change the value of what those items are. It's a little twist on the puzzle, but just enough to keep it interesting. Same designer, same illustrator. So if you're leaning more towards card play, then Walking in Burano, it might be more your speed. If you really love Roll and Writes, then maybe Walking in Burano, Roll and Write might be a little bit more your speed. And one little tidbit of Cardboard East history is that if you take the Walking in Burano box and you flip it over, there's going to be a QR code that'll take you to a how to play video that's done by me and my floating hands. And I remember that week I was walking around an apartment doing weird things with my hands, thinking about how to structure my hands for the video. I think I did a good job on that video many, many years ago. I'll put a link down below so you can check it out. Number 11, Dao Chung from So Games. Now, if you don't know, Dao Chung is a clothing market in Taiwan, right dab in the middle of Taipei. This is a very interesting game because there are these 4x4, this grid of tiles, and on your turn you're going to flip 1 or 2 and try to get 4 in a row. And if you're able to do that, then you get all these resources. But the fun twist is that you do 4, you get the resources, and then you flip them. Oh, and then look, you got another 4. You get the resources, and then you flip. You get another 4, and you can combo, whoa, and just get a ton of resources. Now the question is, what do you do with those resources? Well, in the first edition, you're just buying different buildings and converting them for victory points. In the second edition, you are using those resources to not only buy buildings, but to push up these tracks and ship to different parts of the world. And you get points in different ways on how you do that. This is a great mid-weight puzzle of a game, and I definitely feel like it is unique. There aren't many games that have like this weird puzzly element to get resources, and then all of a sudden now you're in a strategy game. And I really like that balance there. Now, if you ask me which edition do I like more, I'm easily going to say the second edition because you get more flexibility with what you do with your cubes. Now, if you've been following me on YouTube and on my socials for a while, you'll notice that this part of the box was the banner for my socials, like my Twitter, my Facebook, and the YouTube. I've since changed it to the shelf, and if you have any questions about why I made that choice, ask down below and I'll let you know. But this is the first game that I played from Taiwan where I was really, really impressed and thought, wow, maybe there's some really good games here, and I should really look into that. But this is just part one of a two-part series, so stick around for the next video. I'll see you there.